now, your main event. Introducing the hosts of Wrestling with Freddie, Jeff Dye, and Freddie Prinze Jr.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to a brand new episode of Wrestling with Friends, Wrestling with Freddie. But it's Friends today because I have my co-host, greatest co-host in the world, Mr. Jeff Dye. How are you today, sir?
Feeling good, buddy. How you feeling?
I'm feeling pretty good.
Feeling strong? Looking strong.
Thanks, man. Let me flex for you. Bye.
Boom.
Sir, a lot of times I might hear an idea in the moment and be, that's awesome. And then the next day, or I'll write something down late at night. I'm like, this is the best movie idea ever. And the next morning I'll read it and be like, this is the worst piece of shit I've ever written. But I still think The Medieval's Jester is a wonderful idea. However, I also love Santino Marella. So you never know. You never know. But I think Medieval Times is a winner. And then you wouldn't have to leave town as much. You could just work here.
Yeah, I could just live at Medieval Times. Although Buena Park is not close from where I live. I don't want to say my exact address, but when I was going to Medieval Times, I was like, all right, I'll get there. I'll probably leave I have to leave like an hour. You know, everything's like an hour in LA. I put in those 2 hours and 35 minutes. And I was like, all right, I guess I'm leaving now at 3:00 in the afternoon.
All right. So, well, you just relocate to Buena Park, bro. This week, y'all, we're going to take things back. I did a show for A&E called WWE Rivalries.
Yes.
And it was a wonderful experience. I really enjoyed doing it. And I loved getting to hang out with some of the old school and new school wrestlers and get their takes on things. And we thought we would do an episode dedicated to rivalries, ladies and gentlemen. So we're going to give you, I'm not saying they're the best, but I'm going to say they're the most well-known. We're not going to have time to probably get through every single rivalry in the world, but here we go.
I have one on the list that didn't make it, which I'm surprised, but go ahead.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Well, then we should do that one second to make sure that we get it. I want to start with the one that I always thought was the funniest one, and that's why I think you'll like it too. It's during the Attitude Era, which I know you love.
Mm-hmm.
It's The Rock versus Stone Cold Steve Austin and the rivalry they had. I know you love these guys. I know you love this era. Some of the stuff they did to me was way beyond the line of reality, but somehow, as long as they're cool with me laughing at some of the stuff, then it all worked. And I feel like they would be, because they were taking the piss, as the British would say, out of themselves for most of this. I love this storyline, but I want to start with you because you're younger than me and this is your generation's golden era of wrestling. And by far, by any marker, the most successful financial period in the history of wrestling. And there will never be, well, except they just sold for $1 billion. It'll never happen again. So I'm already wrong. Take it away, sir.
I would say the Rock versus Stone Cold Steve Austin rivalry was like your two best friends fighting. You're like, God, I love Stone Cold. And then The Rock goes like, oh, God, I love The Rock. Like, it was so, most of these feuds, I can pick who I was rooting for and it would rile you up, you know, because you're like, gosh, I hate John Cena or I hate CM Punk or whatever. When you have literally two of the most popular guys of that time, arguably ever, going back and forth, and they're cut from a different cloth. You know, The Rock came from the Nation of Domination. That's like the all black stable. That's like, we've had enough. We're angry and we're going to show you how good we are at wrestling. And you got this kind of like white trash, beer drinking rattlesnake that flips everyone off and is always referencing Texas. And it's just the two coolest guys of both sides. I really, really, really loved every single time. I never cared who won. I never cared who lost because I just liked both of them so much. Like you said, they did crazy things, like with the beer. And there was like, sometimes it looked like they became friends and then they get stone cold. I mean, there was just or he gets stunned. But so I really,
the greatest sell ever of a stunner is The Rock. Nobody's ever sold it that good ever again.
When I met Stone Cold, I've only met him once ever. He goes, who do you think took the stunner the best? And I go, I think Vince McMahon took it the best. He goes, well, I disagree with you, young man. I think he's the worst that's ever taken it. And he goes, all right.
I would agree with that.
And he goes, who's the worst that ever take it? And I go, The Rock. And he goes, I'm going to disagree with you again. We're off to a bad start. He goes, The Rock took it the best.
We agree again.
I know.
See, you got to trust your boy, man.
I was
Me and Stone Cold are like two peas in a pod.
I had it reversed because, like, when Vince got stunned, it looked like he died, and so that's the only reason I said that.
Because he almost did.
And when The Rock gets stunned, he's bouncing around and flopping around like a fish in the ring, which is funny, and that's why everyone liked it. It was very, very good. I just remember being a teenager, being like, "Oh gosh, he's making it look fake," and it's like I didn't have my wrestler.
Totally.
Brain,
yeah, totally.
But,
that's why I loved it, because it was so over dramatic.
That rivalry was really, 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 really incredible. I liked it very much.
There was more cursing on television during this rivalry, just in this rivalry, than on any other network television show in the history of television combined. There is more son of a bitch, I'll beat your ass. Yeah, I'll see you in hell. There is more cursing than any NBC, CBS, ABC show combined. Now, The Sopranos will have them beat, right? Episodes of Boardwalk Empire would have had them beat. I don't know if they cursed in Game of Thrones. I never saw that, but I bet if they did, they might be able to beat them. But that's cable and streaming services. There's no rules. This was on national TV, and you would hear people legit just constant, "You son of a bitch, I'll beat your ass. You're going down."
Son of a bitch. Like, I heard that every word or every sentence came out of Stone Cold's mouth.
I know these matches have all been reviewed a million times. And so I'd like to talk more about, at least on my side, the content they were putting out. But I do remember one story that Brian Gewirtz told me when I worked there that I'm sure he'd be fine with me sharing. And if not, then I'll apologize, but it's nothing bad. He was the voice behind The Rock, Brian Gewirtz, he was a sitcom writer from Hollywood who was just a huge wrestling fan, went out there, and a sitcom writer quickly became the best writer they had because he was a professional writer. He wasn't just a fan of wrestling. He knew how to construct stories. And so he gets there and he had to work his way up. It's not like he was the head writer right away. The Rock kind of made him. Didn't kind of, but made him. But he was the one writing all those great promos. The Rock says this, The Rock says that. Like, he was the one writing all this great, take you down the Jabroni Avenue to the You Suck Hotel and all, all that crap. So they're working on this big promo before one of the Stone Cold Steve Austin matches. I wish I could remember which one and give you better context. But they've been sitting there and they couldn't find the words. And so they're working together backstage and, just trying to make it perfect. And Stone Cold walks up he's trying to be funny, but in a dick way of being funny, walks by and goes, "I don't know why you're working so hard. You're just losing the goddamn match anyway," and just walks out of the room. And they're both like, "Bro, what? Hey, come on, man. We're just trying to get our jobs done." So it was cool to know that these two guys were cool like that in order to pull off this type of a match. Because there's other rivalries we'll get into where the guys aren't cool. But when you have two people that respect each other enough to oversell his finisher at the level he oversells it, which at 13 that makes it look fake, but still he was trying to show respect.
Oh, for sure.
And to see Stone Cold be able to praise Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson as he does to this day lets you know that both men were in it together. And that's when you get the best stuff. Both guys were trying to do business. Bret Hart and Shawn Michaels, which I want to get into next, could have lasted forever, but bad business was done. So it had to end. And that just makes these types of rivalries that much more special. But the throwing the titles in the river and throwing each other in the river and all the shit.
It's so good.
There's just so much cursing, dude. They were just like, "Yo, you can say anything but fuck. You can say any word on earth. You just can't say an F-bomb." And they're like, "Cool, let's go to town." Because I'm going to want to watch that. Everybody wants to see people break the rules.
They're like, let them rip. We'll pay the fines. Who cares? This is good TV. We're getting a lot of ratings with Stone Cold and The Rock.
I feel like there was an out that if something's caught on a camera mic, the fine was null and void.
Really?
I believe there was a clause in that if it was a camera mic, because that's out, the defense was, and these are things that are collectively bargained. I believe that if it's caught on a camera mic, it's okay, because that's how professional sports franchises get out of that when like you hear. Now they try to bleep it when they can, and that's why they put in that 7-second delay. But I do believe there was something in there because like, yo, we can't be held accountable for what, you know, the fans are saying and things like that. And I believe WWE has used that clause before to get out of that. Shawn Michaels versus Bret Hart. This to me should have been a 3-hour episode of WWE Rivals. This could have gone on forever. For me, it's the most talked about moment in professional wrestling, probably because it was real and it happened. Former guest of the show, Ariel Helwani, was actually there in the crowd when it happened, which is worthy of all my jealousy. But these two guys didn't like each other at all. And for those of you who aren't like the hardcore wrestling fans, but you tune in just for the sound of Jeff's and my voice, this was real stuff. The guys hated one another. They had been in a fight backstage. Shawn Michaels was not the good guy in this. He was the bad guy in this. And he's talked about this publicly. So it's not spilling salt on somebody's wounds, but his ego was out of control. There was drug abuse, all kinds of things like that. And it was, leading to a specific type of behavior that Bret Hart just wasn't about. He was such an old school guy, and he was all about respect and doing things the right way. And Shawn didn't care. He was going to be the guy. And that was the foundation that this real life rivalry was set upon. And then they have to go tell a story in the friggin' ring. Jeff, where does this rate for you as far as like rivalries in the whole list of all the rivalries?
It's obviously up there. It's obviously one of the best. It's undeniably the best, even if you don't like either of those wrestlers, because it was personal. You could tell it was personal as a viewer. And also, if you're the kind of kid, which I was occasionally, like, oh, this is real. Oh, that was real. Like that, this is the rivalry for you. Because even back then, before like the internet was what it is today, you knew somehow I was aware that Shawn Michaels was hated in the locker room. And I know that Bret Hart was respected, but also Bret is a grump. Bret is a pretty grumpy guy. Like Razor Ramon and him are going back and forth in a promo, and Razor Ramon almost comes off like the more likable one. And Razor's
does.
Razor's the bad guy, the self-proclaimed
I didn't even
bad
think about
guy.
that. Yeah.
Who's like, I'm gonna chop you up with my machismo. Like he's literally, and then they go to Bret, and Bret's like, I've always worked hard. And you're like, that's the good guy. There's no smile. There's no it's just, we're understood that that's the good guy. He wears the pink and the black. He comes from this family. He's fundamental. He does all the most technical work in the ring. It felt real, and it was real at times and very personal. And then with the big Montreal screw job, which is still talked about because it was real. Yeah, it's up there. It's not my favorite. I was never a Shawn Michaels guy, and I was never a Bret Hart guy. And it's not that I didn't like them. I was a teenager. When you're a little boy, you don't want to root for the guy coming out. It's like, I'm a sexy boy. I'm like, when is the Undertaker going to come in here and choke slam this twink? So wasn't really my guys, but I also, as an adult, can recognize how dope both of those wrestlers were. And also how cool, now that I'm a grown man and more reasonable, Shawn Michaels was one of the GOATs for sure.
Yeah. I think most people put him top.
Behaviorally, he was a mess, I heard.
Yeah, but that's public knowledge now. So
Yeah.
don't get mad at us for saying things, and we're not pouring salt. We're just explaining a story. And for those of you who don't know what the screw job is, again, I know we have some listeners that aren't wrestling fans. This was like the worst business you could do on someone. Imagine working for your boss, doing a great job. Your boss gives you a raise. A few months into the raise says, hey, I can't afford that raise anymore. Can we go back to your original salary? You'd already be insulted.
Oh, yeah.
Then you get an offer from another company. You say, okay, well, then this offer's better. Do you mind if I go there? And your boss says, no, that's okay. But when you leave, are you cool if the person who's going to take your office humiliates you in front of everybody? And you go and like, yo, how many more things do I have to do, man?
Also, don't worry, we're not going to do that. And then they just do that to surprise you.
Yeah.
And you're like, wait, what?
Yeah. You say, I'm not comfortable with that. And they say, okay. And then on your last day of work, one of your coworkers just comes in and takes a shit on your desk and says, do something about it, bitch. And you just have to take it and get thrown out by security. And you're like, he shit on my desk. I wasn't the one doing it.
I thought we weren't going to do this. I was told we're not going to do this. They said that.
That's what happened to Bret Hart. So put yourself in his shoes. You might be a little grumpy. Although he did have grumpiness before then, I'll give you that.
His whole career, he seemed grumpy, and listen to him in your interview now. He's still pretty grumpy.
I still love him. I don't care. His sunglasses were cool. All right, dude. I want to make sure you get yours in here because it's a big list. So, what's your rivalry that didn't make the list? Producer Alex, you should be ashamed of yourself. Go ahead.
No, don't say that about producer Alex doing the Lord's work. But I think one of my favorite ones, or maybe the most memorable, and this could just be my age, it could just be my interest in wrestling that is a little uniquer than others, Kane and Undertaker. When I always liked Kane, I always liked Undertaker. Everyone did. He was one of the only characters that could still live on in kind of like this fantasy. He's like a dead wizard, while all the other wrestlers are kind of going into an era where it's like, just their names, and like we don't really have a shtick, like we're done with the whole cop thing and the Indian thing and the clown thing. Like Undertaker's transcended it. He was still able to
like
be
the cop thing.
Me too. I loved all that stuff, but wrestling seemed to be going
awesome.
past that. Yeah. Like they started to do this other thing. Undertaker still lived on, he's still lived on as far as like he was able to go into the next era as this character. So when they introduced a equally preposterous character that was Undertaker's twin brother back, who thought he was always dead. I don't know if it was his twin brother, but it was his brother who he was thought died in a fire that Undertaker started. And it was like Undertaker's secret past. And Paul Heyman was really aware of it, and the way he played both sides, it was so good. I just thought that rivalry was so fun to watch. Every single week I was invested. And Kane lived on to be one of the greatest wrestlers ever because of that start. So that was probably one of my favorites.
Yeah, I mean, we did Kane and Taker on Rivalries. So nice. Yeah, it meant a lot to that, not just to you, to a lot of people. It was an old school story for the time in a new school world, and it made it stand out. And it had, I feel like that helped it resonate with the older generation that wasn't getting the cops and the IRS tax guys and like all those kind of characters anymore. And they were sort of the last two attractions in wrestling, right? Like where it's not the pro wrestler, it's the gimmick and the image they portray. We know nobody can make fire come out of the turnbuckles, but this guy still does, even though we know it's a pyro guy underneath pressing a button.
But it's cool.
So they both held something special. But again, it was the story thing that made it work. Otherwise, it's just two big guys, as Big E would say, meaty men slapping meat. And you have to care about the meat if you want to watch it slap people. And in order to do that, you have to have a story that means something. And the story back then was, like you said, he had a brother that he thought was dead. And here he comes. Oh, shit. And the great thing about that rivalry was post-rivalry, it turns into a tag team.
Yeah.
And they become the Brothers of Destruction. And so it goes from hate back to love, right? So there had to be forgiveness in there somewhere. But when they became the Brothers of Destruction, I liked them even more. And I already liked both guys, but I was like, oh, the Brothers of Destruction. No, there's not a tag team, and the Demolition can't beat them. No way. There's not a tag team because they're not as tough. The Hardys can't beat them. They'll get snapped. Like nobody was going to beat the Brothers of Destruction. I loved them as a tag team. So yeah, you're right. They should have been on.
They also looked cool like that. Like they looked like they're like a Halloween costume. Try to dress like a lot of wrestlers on Halloween. It's tough. But like when you see someone dressed up as Undertaker and or Kane, you go, I know exactly what they are. I know exactly what that is. And it's like a full thing. So I loved their look.
There are a ton for us to get to, and I'm trying to get a little bit into the later modern era before we run out of time, but I'm happy to do a different one if you don't want to. Would you like to do CM Punk, John Cena, or do you want to jump into someone else that tickles your fancy a bit more?
Do that one.
All right. I think this one is relevant because CM Punk is arguably top man, right, on the microphone. As far as promos go. CM Punk
Okay, yeah.
in the company at this
Yeah.
time. Whereas John Cena cut the same promo every week. It was, here I am. I'm here for you. I'm here for the people. I'm here for the kids. You got to work hard. You got to do things the right way. And CM Punk got to be completely free in this and say what a lot of fans thought about the brand at that time, ignoring what the kids liked, right? And even said that in some of his promos, like, why do you think you're on in the first segment? Because most kids are going to bed. Like Triple H had cracked jokes on that before. CM Punk took a little bit of it as well. But CM Punk's ability to talk to not only Cena, but to Vince McMahon on the mic in a promo face to face and come out as the winner in every single promo, in my opinion. Even when I disagreed with some of the takes he was having, he won every single promo. Now, granted, and I prefaced it with he got a lot more freedom because John Cena's locked into was locked into a very specific promo at that time. When he was putting guys over, like young guys, now you've seen some different stuff where he's doing the CM Punk promo on guys like Austin Theory, where he's doing the CM Punk promo before that on Roman Reigns and saying the real stuff that the fans were saying. John Cena as champion, as the G-rated era champion, would never do that. He would never do that. It would all just land, all that, the real stuff would just fall off his broad shoulders and he would just do the company line every time. And I think that's why people responded so much to this, because the older fans hated everything John stood for. Now they appreciate the sacrifice he made because they understand it was more of a sacrifice, I think. But then it was just pure hatred. The signs, if Cena wins, we riot. Never had the balls to riot, but you always brought your signs. And then CM Punk, who was, as he said in his own words, I am the voice of the voiceless. And that resonated with everybody. Not to mention the fact that both guys could wrestle their ass off, even though they would say, you can't wrestle to John Cena. Forget all that, dude. The dude could wrestle. And these guys tore the house down. And this was during the G era, and they made it look at least PG-13, if not R sometimes. What about you, dude? What'd you think?
Well, so then do you liked the rivalry? You liked these guys?
It's not so much that I like, because I'm not a John Cena guy. I just respect what his contribution was to the business and the sacrifices he had to make. Everyone knows how I feel about CM Punk. I think he's awesome. He can wrestle and he can talk sick on the mic. He's older now and can't work the way he used to, but back then he was a man. But neither guy was a connective tissue guy for me. I never got behind and rooted for anyone, but he brought so much real shit to the table, excuse my language, and that hadn't been done in that company, hadn't even been allowed to be done. And CM Punk got to do it. And I think that's what made it so special, is because he was telling the truth a lot.
Yeah. I was not a big fan of either of these guys. I think I still hold John Cena in contempt for that rapping gimmick. Like he would come out, like, it's just, it was so cringy and weird. He was also like, if you look back on some of those, pretty racist. He said a lot of like really racially insensitive things about Mexicans and stuff. Like when he was going to the ring about Eddie Guerrero, like he said a lot of like cringy bad stuff.
Yo, you just popped a story in my head. There was this like underground story, and eventually I think photos or video came out of Juan Cena where he would have to wear a mask, and John hated wearing masks, and I knew that, and I was the one that pitched Juan Cena to Vince, and Vince popped for it and made him do a tour in Mexico as Juan Cena. And just because he knew he would hate wrestling in the mask, because John had been kind of like a prick to me when I first worked there. I was like, Vince will never say yes, but I'm just going to put it over. Vince is like, that's fucking great. We're doing it. And he had to be Juan Cena. But go ahead. I always deleted his raps out of my mind because they were like not what I liked as far as rap went. So I don't know what the content
was so bad and cringy, and he was like trying to be edgy, but it always just come off terrible. Never was a John Cena guy. Even when he came around, he seemed, I don't know if he seems kind of curt. He seems very like stuffy.
I think
even as the good guy.
Kurt, I think, is a fair thing to say. Sure.
And then Punk, I was just never like a big Punk guy because I kind of missed that generation of wrestling. Like that was the
ruthless aggression era was not your favorite.
Well, I just wasn't watching, so it wasn't like big on Punk. And people go, "Oh, you see what CM Punk did?" Like, I missed it. I was too busy doing whatever was more important in my life at that time, trying to survive, basically. So these two, like their rivalry was like never like a huge thing for me. I know that they're very important to a lot of people as far as like seen as a classic good guy and CM Punk is a classic bad guy, but it still just kind of feels like Hogan versus, it feels like we've got the classic good guy and then the classic kind of but bad guy. I don't know. I just didn't do much for me, but I do recognize that they were important to a lot of people.
I believe the term pipe bomb promo actually spawned from this rivalry based on the promo that you should go watch on YouTube because I can't reenact it because Punk killed it. But I think that was the birth of that phrase, the pipe bomb promo. I got to see the second pipe bomb promo locally here in LA when MJF went ham on national television and broke every rule. I bet they got fined that night.
Oh, man. You know what's funny is I love that Punk gets credited for the first like pipe bomb, like on that kind of stuff. Now MJF's doing a pipe bomb every week. Like every week he's just going.
If he does it too much though, then maybe it doesn't mean as much. So
didn't Dusty Rhodes do one a long time ago? Or not Dusty, Dustin Rhodes. He came out dressed in some terrible costume and he just kept like, I'll send it to you guys, but I think he had like one where he was like, for years they made me wear a gold dress and they called me Gold Dust. They made me do this crap and you know how my family's been in wrestling this long and this is the death. They put me in this crap and make me come out here. Like it was like a legit speaking to the back of the house.
I always thought he loved Gold. That was his idea, I thought. Maybe I'm tripping.
Maybe that was part of it. Maybe that's just part of the gimmick that he was pretending to not like it. I don't know. But.
Yeah, maybe he was that good. All right, you guys, we'll check it out. If you want to get into what our most favorite current rivalries have been, you can get it on Thursday's episode. So make sure you download that too. Thank you guys for your support. Jeff, I love you, brother.
Love you, buddy. Thanks for having me on again.
Peace.
Follow us on Instagram, Wrestling with Freddie. Twitter is WWFreddie Pod. Follow us on all the socials so you can submit your questions for the Federation.
This has been a production of iHeart's My Cultura Podcast Network. For more podcasts from iHeartRadio, visit the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to your favorite shows.